So the first 40% that we're going to talk about is structure. Think of the structure as a blueprint for your paper, the bones of what you're doing. If you don't have the blueprint, you don't have the bones, then the whole thing falls apart. It is essential that you have clear, complete sentences so that your reader can understand what you're trying to say. It's also essential that you have certain structure sentences. You need to make sure that you have a thesis statement at the end of your introduction paragraph and that thesis statement is clear and specific. You also want to make sure that you have at the beginning of each body paragraph topic sentences, also called subthesis statements, and that before you prove something with text, you make a specific claim or a little mini argument. We'll get into what all these things mean in the outline, but for now, you want to make sure that you have the structure sentences in place that your outline specifies. So if you're confused about this element of the rubric, please make sure that you review the outline. You will also lose points if your introductory element is insufficient. Again, your outline is going to help you on this, but every part of the paper should have an introductory element. So each paragraph should have an introductory element, and then the paper as a whole should have an introductory element. And you want to flow in that first part from general to more specific. At the end of your paper and at the end of every body paragraph, you're going to have a concluding element. So the conclusion paragraph at the end of the paper should really be interesting, and it should tie together all the other things that you've done throughout the paper. You may also lose points for putting the supports or the quotes that you use out of sequence. Generally, when we put quotes in sequence, they go chronologically. So let's say that you're making an argument about what's happened in a chapter of a book. Within each body paragraph, you're going to arrange the quotes in the order that they appear in the book. This might change if you've got a different method of organization. So, for example, if you're organizing by character, and maybe within each paragraph, you're going to talk about one character first, then the next character, and then a third character, or the relationship between those first two characters, you might choose to have an order of organization that does go out of chronological order, but because there's a clear plan there and it makes sense, you would still be in sequence. So if you're feeling confused about this, stick to chronological. If you're ready to take some risks and play around with it, you can create another structure or sequence. Just check in the outlining stages to make sure that this works well. You will lose points also if your organization in general is poor or incoherent. So if I can't tell why you've put the quotes within the paragraph in a certain order or the paragraphs themselves in a certain order, let's say that your thesis statement or your subthesis statements don't match up with what actually happens in your paper, then you might lose points here. And finally, you want to avoid non sequiturs, which are statements that are random or don't make sense after the statement that they follow. So if you're arguing one point, you want to transition smoothly into the next. Don't just bring up something else that you may think is relevant. This is particularly important. Remember that if you're writing an analytical essay, you shouldn't all of a sudden throw in a connection to your life, or you shouldn't